Here at Nurture Nature Center, we often take note of how great connections are made and in such a timely way, how people approach us or reveal themselves to us in the most opportune times, and with a particular set of talents, skills, knowledge that are almost perfectly in line with what our needs are at the time or what the community needs are, as if it's fated. And it's happened over and over here again. And we've developed many great partnerships with the community that have been timely and long-lasting. So I was not completely surprised after 10 years of working here as an art director that one more hidden pearl in the city of Easton was about to be revealed to me. A year ago, this week, I set up a studio visit with Thom Crawford, an artist who I'd heard had chose not to exhibit his work in quite some time. So I walked up the narrow set of stairs and down that long, dark hallway and came to the end, and the door opened up into this large, bright loft filled with a stunning amount of work. And the work was both painted, sculptural, personal and sacred, interstellar and intimate, and Mother Earth in all cosmic directions, as Thom would say. Beautiful modernist pieces full of symbolic abstraction that reflected a searching and a knowing at the same time. For me, it was another one of those NNC alignments, an opportunity that I was looking for to bring a larger show to the center, a solo show that would command our large exhibit space, something that's really not easy to do and hadn't been done before. And to present a show that easily fits in the sphere of our mission, and one that would help reintroduce an artist and his work to his community. So it's with great pleasure tonight that I introduce Thom Crawford. Thom Crawford is a painter, sculptor, and poet who has exhibited extensively in the US and abroad. Born in Boston, he received his MFA from Syracuse University and a postgraduate MFA fellowship from Rhode Island School of Design. He has taught at Lafayette College, Kutztown University, Northampton Area Community College, Binghamton University, Syracuse University, Parsons School of Design in New York, Caldwell College in New Jersey, Rhode Island School of Design, and Middlebury College of Vermont. He is a 1985 recipient of a National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship in Painting. He received a New York Cap Grant Award in Painting, an Open Studio Press Award, Mid-Atlantic New American Painting, and awarded a residence grant at the McDowell Colony and a residency in Ballinkellings, close enough, sorry, County Kerry, Ireland. A small sampling of his exhibition venues include the Stadtmuseum Walheim, Germany, Nama Gallery, Tel Aviv, Galerie Libre, Montreal, Catherine Hammond Gallery, Dublin, Basel Art Fair, Switzerland, many New York galleries, and the Nurture Nature Center in Easton, Pennsylvania. He has had over 34 one-person exhibits nationally, 16 in New York. He hasn't had a solo show in almost 2 decades, so we are here tonight to welcome him and to welcome his work. Finally, I would like to read a brief excerpt from his friend, colleague, and former student, Robert Matterson, professor of art history from Lafayette College, who couldn't be here tonight. Bob Matterson writes, in 1993, an exhibition of Thom Crawford's sculpture in Long Island City, New York. For that show, he wrote, "Contemporary life seems on one hand marked by cynicism, and on the other by ethnic, political, and social fragmentation. In such a world, it takes an act of faith to believe in universal values. There are a few contemporary artists even willing to search for the common forms that connect us as members of the human race. Thom Crawford seeks such archetypal symbols. While Crawford's artwork has evolved into new and dynamic poetic forms, my words ring truer than ever in the year 2019. And I would like to thank Bob Madison and Lafayette College for helping to make this exhibition possible. So I'm going to turn on the presentation and welcome Thom Cooney Crawford.
That was quite an introduction, and I appreciate that very much. First of all, I want to thank Nurture Nature and having this opportunity, which is, like Carrie was saying, a coming out for me. And I have not seen my work in a space like this before, ever. So it's really a way of me coming back into what I do and seeing it in a different perspective. So I want to thank everyone for coming. I do have friends here and artist friends, and I'm part of the community and so forth. And I, have been living in a lot of different places. And I originally came to Easton in 1990 when I taught at Lafayette from New York. And then I left, and I came back again 9 years ago from Ireland. Actually, I'll talk more about that. And so it's been a journey, but this has been a wonderful place to create art and to be part of the community and so forth. And so, anyway, let's see if I can do this. This is from the mezzanine. If you haven't seen it yet, it's a beautiful way to look down on the exhibition. And what I want to do to start off is read something. The title of this exhibition, of course, is The Inner Eye of Art and the Outer Spark. Actually, that was a title I used to start an art class last January. And it had to do with the parallels of our spiritual awareness and the creative process. And I would like to read a couple of sentences from that page that I wrote last year, which really kind of gives an atmospheric feeling for what I'm about. And it goes like, it is through the creative enactment that not only fosters technique and aesthetic concernment, but is itself a medium to uplift a transformation to our aware, being the deeper thread of our interconnectedness. This pull in us toward beauty, unity, oneness, symmetry, peace, and more are corollaries that point to the same inner wholeness. The outer harmony can spark our inner harmony, yet it is our inner harmony that is ever constant and comes to light when unveiled and unblocked. Art is a natural catalyst of transformation. I'm going to present a little bit about how I started, and then I'll talk more about the work. I started actually quite early because of my mother. When I was about 15, she pushed me into having art classes. And I have to give her a lot of credit, but it was my uncle who was an artist, and he was educated in art through the Worcester Museum of Art. And he saw some drawings of mine when I was in high school. And so he suggested, I was a senior in high school, he suggested that I go to the Provincetown Workshop, which is in Massachusetts. Now, to back up a little bit, up until I was 12, I was living in New England in Hamilton, Massachusetts, a very small town in the 50s. So my backyard was basically fields and woods and so forth. And so I really had a very kind of innocent beginning. We moved then down to Miami, Florida, where I went from a school. There was a couple hundred people within the high school and middle school to 1,000. And so being 12 years old, which is kind of a difficult time period, I really emerged into meeting other cultures, which was really very advantageous for me. My best friend, I went to his bar mitzvah. I had a friend that just came over from Cuba at that time with his mother, and so on, Italian and so forth. So it opened up another bridge for me. It didn't stop there. When I was 15, we moved to Birmingham, Alabama. This is in the 60s, beginning 50s, 60s. So that was a lash of feeling the intensity of hatred and anger and what was going on and so forth. So I had another education, and it really brought another sphere of understanding life and so forth. I'm going to go in and out of talking about, I'll lead up my story. This particular Orpheus, I call them Orpheuses, because of the archetype. And I have to admit that unconsciously, I had named my dog in 1971 Orpheus. Now, I named my cat Copernicus. And so I was already cosmic, but I didn't know it. And then eventually Orpheus came into position when I came back from Ireland. And so this Orpheus figure was done in 2019. And here, the antennas and all the aspects that are happening to his body really are there for interpretations, but there are feelings of outer space, inner space. Orpheus figures themselves are wrapped up like cocoons. So the energy forces are inside. The wrappings and everything propel a spiral. And having a cocoon, it's a sense of rebirth. So it's very symbolic of that. And the other thing is that, if you look at the face, you'll see, well, this is not a good one, so I'm going to continue. All right, that's the back view. The other Orpheus figures were done in around 2013. And so the ellipses and the antenna on top and so forth are not only, suggestive of the cosmic aspect, but they're also suggestive of inverted roots, and I call the antenna the antenna to hear the inner symphony in a way, or the unseen. I'm going to move on here. This is called The Circle of Life. It's in my studio. It's not in the show. It was too difficult to get out to bring here. And so it's hard to see, but if you look down where the ellipse rings are, which you can't see, but there's a face down there. And once again, the figure is wrapped up in a cocoon, and also is kind of growing out of a tree-like position. And the painting behind it is about 12 feet long, and it's not in the show. but it gives a sense of the energy forces, and they kind of play off each other. They have a relationship when they're together, and I feel as I work, like for example, the paintings are physically at times very, very active. I mean, in other words, it requires that type of physicality of me. The sculptures are very quiet. They're made of wax, and in the wax, it's a long, arduous process. And so I have these two sides. And just to let you know, as you know, my name is Thom, right? What Thom means is twin. So I have one side that's very active, and another side is more quiet and so forth. And I like that combination. And it really helps me to keep going in the sphere and the vision that unravels. This is downstairs. The Eclipse Paintings are a series that I did that's about 12 of them. And they were done in 2013. And I actually collaborated with Robert Kelly, a poet at Bard College. And he wrote the poems to each one. So I put it up into this setting because the middle piece, which is the sculpture in wax, really has a similar feeling to it. I mean, it's hard to see the shadows and so forth, but if you look at the face, in that shadow there's a lot of scarification. And you're asking, what would that be, you know? And the other side is like Buddha-like. It's, you know, kind of contemplative. It's restful. So if you go to the scarification, it has more to do with our life living. We all go through sufferings in some degree, whatever it may be. And if we're wise, if we end up with some wisdom, we carry that into more compassion for other people and understanding. So I kind of play off that metaphor. The other side of peace has to do with coming in inwardly into really recognizing your inner harmony and peace. And so I kind of play off that side. So they're eclipse. The other thing about eclipse is that we know, looking at the eclipse, that we can't look at it directly. We have to look at it indirectly. And that's kind of a metaphor in life, that some of the qualities that are really present within us, we have to know by an eclipse, by something else that is showing it. We can't go directly there. So, and then once again, I have another curve, and it's coming out and it's going in. But spatially, you'll see downstairs, it really gives another dimension to it that I work with, that I feel. So, and this is also downstairs, and it's still Orpheus, but in another position. And yeah, as you know, Orpheus went to the underworld. Sometimes we have to go to the underworld, and some of us don't really make it back. Orpheus was supposed to be in the metaphor of his archetype, both a human and both a god. So he represents this coming of transformation, of coming into a spiritual awareness. So it fits into what I'm trying to evoke in a way. And this one is called Archetypal Playground for Adults. So it really kind of plays off that. And it really, the figures are actually sculptures. They're made to be sculptures there. And if you look at the petals, it's a zodiac. There are actually 12 petals. And within that, you can lie in that and look up to the sky. And so there's a ritualistic aspect. The passageways are like thresholds. One of the things symbolically, even since the early ancients, have been portals to pass through, and that represents an awakening, and so forth. The little ones in the front are vessel seats. You'll see some you'll see some images of them a little bit later. Basically seek for reasons, and I understand how paradoxes work, and I kind of seek for a peacefulness or silence in one stand. But at the same time, the work is very demanding. In other words, you can't just walk by and give it a glance. There's a lot going on. And so that combination of, feeling the piece, but at the same time seeing the layers that are there is very much in what I try to evoke. This one is 12 feet long. The 18 paintings up above are called Pollen. It's a series of pollen called Pollen Eye. I tend to work in series, and what happens is that once I work through the series, then on a practical level, it really gives me the opportunity to really develop one or two that are more exceptional than the others. And then I don't try to continue. It's always within the same scope, but it's always searching for something that's more stimulating for me at the same time. So at first, I just had the wall relief, which is another figure levitating, and in that levitation, there's multiple aspects that are going on that are very suggestive. And if you have, like I said, if you have any questions, it could help bring me out too with some of the aspects that I'm not talking about. But the right side is sort of like a umbilical cord in a way, and the touching of the toe and the umbilical cord sort of goes back to the Sistine Chapel with Adam and God kind of meeting in a way, There's a lot of activity. The way I work wax is it's imprinted constantly by my fingers. It's so it's very organic, and every touch has a feeling to it. So to me, that's important. I have done work before in plaster where I didn't have that vibrancy with the texture, and so this has become more aligned with where I want to go and continue. Having wax like this, it's a poor man's bronze, because many people walk into the space down there and they think it's bronze. So it's a good thought, but it's not. And it's a close-up, give you more the texture of this. So I do a lot of reliefs, and the one thing about sculpture is that, and the beauty of it is the changing of light and shades. The shadows play a big part. One thing about painting is usually direct and you're looking at the painting. But when you have sculpture, if it's outside, it's affected by the sun and the changing light. And I really like that in the studio. The shadows really seem to have a life to it that gives it another type of force. And so this one is downstairs also that you can see, and it sticks out, It has a presence and has movement to it. And once again, you have an Orpheus face. These faces came about years ago, and I call them witnesses. You know, we are a witness. We are the dreamer of the dream, in a sense, you know. And there's another one. It's a shot in my studio with the pedestal ones. And I do a lot of maquettes. I'm really interested in having larger pieces, having people involved in it. I'm interested in kind of the elements, you know, earth, fire, water, air, and the participation of people with the idea of sacred space. I also like to do photographs that really catch moments of the pieces, and those moments disappear because the light is not, it's only transient, you know, but they really have kind of a poetic feeling to them. This is an installation that was at Lafayette College, 2013. So the angel tree, the big one there is called Angel Tree Shapeshifter. And the ellipses, like I said, are like inverted roots. And a sculpture's problem or challenge is between the rooted earth and the sky up above. How do you relate to that? And the energies that are formed within. What I came upon, just not thinking, were these ellipses. And the one thing about the ellipses, with the aperture that is through it, is that the energy forces go back into the piece. What the angel tree has that Orpheus doesn't have is a sensuality. You know, they're very organic and they're almost dancing. And they're bringing the feminine and the masculine energies together, which I'm very concerned about. And so when it comes up to those hoops, which are also connecting to the cosmic idea, is that you can look up to the sky through the aperture, but at the same time you're brought down to the movement and the strength of these tree-like forms that are very concave and very convex. I mean, trees play a big part archetypically, and I've been playing off that for quite a while. Here's a good example of smaller ones, and trees do dance, depending, you know. Okay, so that's the beginning of sculptures. Now we're into paintings. This is a small one. All right, like I said, these are series. Last one was actually a small painting. This is 72 by 72 inches. And it's a series of about 6 or 7 of this size. And there's a lot more white. You know, it's obvious that I'm attracted to the white and the dark, but with color within the midst of it. I use all kinds of instruments, even my hands, and some brushes and feathers and whatever. And they're panels, so if they were canvases, I would destroy them just by the activity of how I go about it. And I like having these little worlds within worlds. It really is layered over, and it's hard to really kind of get your focus on what kind of landscape is actually being done. And I kind of want to play off that ambiguity. This is a different size. This is 48 by 72 inches. And there's a face up in the upper right in that cluster of spinning circles. I mean, also, when I look at it, you know, in some ways, I mean, just by the movement and the curves, you know, it's trying to escape to become a sculpture, a relief. I mean, it does have that spatial effect. And the way I work is that I don't really plan it out, per se. I might have just an inkling of where I'm going to go. The rest is purely finding it and discovering it along its way. And that really allows me to make some leaps I wouldn't normally do if I was more in the mode of my mind to control it. But I'm in the mode of navigating. In other words, you know, I've been around a long time and I've been working a long time. Navigating is that you know when it feels right and you know when it doesn't feel right. And I think that type of instinct has come about after all these years, especially when I was living in Ireland, which I'll talk about a little bit later. This is a 12-foot long, wide, painting. Once again, you know, it's worlds within worlds. If you're wondering about the egg shapes and so forth, they also play a significant, oh yes. It varies, but when I get into it, I'm a stick to it, you know. So I'm not really sure. Could be a month or something, or longer, or depending. This is 12 feet, so it takes a little longer. But when I say stick to it, is that it becomes a dance. It really allows me to feel it through. And when I can't really leave the studio until I get it to a level that has some kind of appeal to it. And otherwise it really bothers me. And just by that, I probably quicken the pace than a lot of normal artists. Whereas, like I said, with the sculptures, it's very time consuming, and there's a lot of patience I have to have with that. But so it doesn't really answer your question.
Well, I was just curious about the process. The way you said it's a dance and a navigation, I had this idea that you might spend hours and hours working on it. Not that you would complete.
Oh, well, yes. Yeah, no, there are hours. It's not like, you know, bang, it's finished. There are hours about this. And I think also, and a lot of people, you know, some people here, of course, are artists. We know the process. You know, you think you've arrived, and then the next day you look at it, and oh my God, you know, it's not there. And then you can do that a number of times. So it's a process, and it is what I say, a dance. You know, it's you know, you really have to keep up with what it's telling you, in a sense. And sometimes we miss the most important voice that it's giving us. This one's a little bit more active. So these heads, these egg heads, for example, are like planet heads. I call them planet heads. They're also symbolically and metaphorically within the transformation. If you think about There is a face in here, but it's not showing up quite well. It's actually in the white part. If you think about the transformation of awakening and the evolution, if you want, going from sort of the egg into becoming awake, there's this transmission or transformation going on. So I kind of play off that in kind of a cosmic way. And so they do have a purpose. And as you know, the egg itself really is very significant symbolically and of a life force. This is the same painting, but a side view. You can almost see, the surge of energy here. It looks like it's propelled, There's a head up in the left corner, which is a wax head. So I also have been incorporating in different works wax figures, heads. And as some of you know Jim Toya, when he was first here, he was making an interesting comment. He was saying, in art class, this is going against the grain. You're not supposed to put a wax head on a painting, And but he said it really works. Yeah, there are no, confinements when you can really kind of make something work. And I like that combo. This is, I think it's 48 inches long and high, I'm not sure actually. No, I never do. Yeah, no, it's true. I really have to concentrate on that. And this is work on paper. I like working small also, and there's a practical side, and artists know this. If you don't have enough money to buy a large canvas, you work small, and so it has its benefit, especially for traveling, because since I have lived in a number of places, there are times when I just do paper paintings or whatever. And it really helps me when I get to the larger ones, of course, This is 2019. It's a recent painting. I think it's the last one I did before this show. So it really, it's 22 inches long. It's on panel. But I think it really captures, the whole format of what I'm doing. And it's hard to see. There is a face in there. There is the witness. This is 1981, when I was first showing in New York at Tibor's. And it's a little bit different, but the twin figure there, and the large ears, it's kind of symbolic of listening. Somebody I know in here recognizes this. This is another from the 80s. So it's showing the arc of the figure. When I started bringing the figure back in the late 70s and early 80s, it was really interesting. It was like in a fetus position. And then as it expanded out, it became very arc-like. And eventually, it was going into these cosmic spaces and atmospheres. This is from I think, 87 series. So once again, with the maquettes or the models, you see the archway, which has always been a real interest for me in the sense of passage. Another one from the same period, but this is on paper and using the sculptural forms. The leaves are not painted. It's an avocado tree in my kitchen. So I thought I would incorporate it. So this painting is from the 80s and showing, this kind of upright figure. This is from 1995. And when I came back from India, I did some watercolors over there from temple passages, and so I did a series of passages, and it's oil, and I'm not sure the right size of it, but it's not too large. This is when I was in Ireland. I did a series of like mandala type work. So this is one of the series, another one. The energy forces, when I was in Ireland, one of the attractions for me was the fecundating wild beauty of nature and its power. And it was my silent period. In other words, I had really gone into kind of a retreat. And so nature and me became a little bit more together, understanding each other. And what I mean by that is that one of the things that I really kind of have reached for in my process was to become more one with the alchemy of material and the alchemy of transmitting that. And when I was in Ireland, I really kind of surrendered myself to nature more and understanding it more. This is also from Ireland. So that wild beauty really had an effect, a good effect. This is also from Ireland. These are paper pieces. This is a bronze. It's about 8 feet high. It's not a great photo of it, but what happened was that I had a collector who really liked this series, and so he actually put up the money for 12 bronzes, which I showed at the Sculpture Center in 87, I believe. This is called Harcrane's Bridge, the poet. This is about 7 feet high. So you can see what I was doing with the figure already. And so Orpheus was already there, but I didn't know his name at that point. This is a close-up of it. So you can see the sheen, it has a sheen compared to the waxes downstairs.
What year was that?
This is probably 86 I did these, 1986. Sundoor. There's a surreal quality to it. And it really is something that I'm sure some of you artists think about this too. When you start going back and you look at your old work, there are certain things you want to bring up to date a little bit, that, that really kind of speak. And this is the way I kind of look at this work, that it's kind of integrated into what I'm doing a little bit. It's a small piece, but it gives you an idea. Homage to Georgia O'Keeffe. It's actually at the University of Pennsylvania in their sculpture gardens. And it's about almost 10 feet high. It's hard to see all the elements, but there are snakes wrapping around. A snake eating his tail, which is very symbolic. And these are what happened in the late 80s, I guess, is that the figures kind of dissolved. And then I spent more time with the archetypal, more abstract shapes. And this is a series that, one of the first ones I did. And when I did them in plaster, these are in bronze. When I did them in plaster, they were shown in New York. And so there was a write-up in the New York Times, and that's how I got the job at Lafayette, I think. And so I came to Lafayette to teach, after that, when my daughter was 3. Somebody in here recognizes this. This is at Muhlenberg College, and 1995. They're called Shaman Seats. And the terracottas on the wall are also like urns and so forth. I tend to work in such a way that it's perfectly imperfect, and it's purposeful that way. I mean, I look at nature, and it has such an abundance, and it's so perfectly imperfect, so organic and ever-changing, but it has that symmetry with it, and I think art, the more it kind of digs into this organic aspect, but at the same time, that it leads you into a certain symmetry out of that, it becomes kind of exciting. Not kind of, but can be enriched. So I've always been influenced by alignments. My time being abroad and also living in Ireland with all the ancient sites and everything, really it has always been an attraction, especially ley lines, which are these alignments that really come in the magnetic aspect of the earth that become sacred places. And even like Chartres was built on one of those alignments, ancient alignments. And so I feel that a lot of times, like within this sculpture, when a person spectator comes in, the energy forces really change, and they become experienced. I mean, if there's actually a mezzanine here, which you look down, the first shot, and when I'm up there and I'm looking at people there were a group of 29 students here the other day, and it really kind of activates the space, and it has another type of expression to it, This is at City Core in New York. It's in plaster. And in the middle of that floor piece is an urn, a very deep urn. I have done a lot of models. Some of you might recognize this. The mayor refused to have this in Easton. And so what happened to it is that I built it. It's called Wingboat. I built it, it's 10 feet high, and this is Trinity Church in New York. And so it was brought to Trinity Church in New York, and then eventually it went to St. Peter's in City Core, and then eventually the Mitchell Museum. So what happened, if I may, is that Goldsmith, who was mayor then, went above the panel. It was supposed to be for Easton. And he said that the hole in it was too suggestive. And so I called him up and I asked the mayor, I said, what's the problem? And he said, the hole. And I said, well, do you know Henry Moore? He said, no, I don't know Henry Moore. I said, well, he's got more sculptures than any other contemporary sculptor around the world. You should go look at his holes. And so they had an article in Art News, and the title of the article was, "This Hole Went to Holier Places." And so, which was nice. These are plaster, a lot of urn-like shapes. So I was still teaching at Lafayette at this point, and I had a studio down by the river in one of the factory buildings. The Little Dipper. So water plays a big part, and fire also. Like I said, I'm really interested in the elements. So this is in the 90s. You can actually lie in that boat-like lower shape. And then the others, the one on the right, you can sit. It's a gigantic chair. Okay, Sacred Space, Sacred Place. I'm showing this with the title of it because in 2000, well, first of all, this is an installation at Binghamton University where I was sculptor and resident, not president, and that was in 1997. So Sacred Space, Sacred Place was an idea that came about because of the work that I'm expressing to you, in sculpture especially, how they are transmitted into these settings. And so I had people that were interested in backing and so forth, but the timing of it was really not right. And so I never did anything with it. But now, coming out at this time, there's a big change going on, and there are a lot more people in a secular way really interested in spaces like that. There are spas and meditation centers and so on and so forth, and even public situations where people are looking for more restful places. This is just a close-up of that Eclipse series. This is a series I did in 2014, I think. Like I said, I really like to kind of play with dark and light photographs of the work. And so occasionally I'll catch some moment that really kind of is dramatic. Orpheus head. can see where they really play off each other at different times. It also almost has a surreal quality to it, just by the changing of the light.
He almost looked like he was moving.
Uh, Could be. Okay, you're wondering what this is. Well, I was dealing with a foundry in Long Island City. And there was a connection to the Emirates. And so we had a competition to do a model for Sheikh Zayed, who is the founder of the Emirates. And one thing he did when the Emirates came together, which are 7, is he started planting palm trees everywhere. And so I was chosen out of a group of artists to do this. But unfortunately, the person who was in charge had some problems. And anyway, he was in jail for a couple of years, those problems. And so it never really got off the ground. But I did do a number of maquettes, and this is one. It's actually cast in bronze. And there would be water around it, and also there would be poetry from the Quran inside. There's some drawings of it. So I also, have this architectural side to me. And it was an interesting project that never happened. This was another one that never happened. It was supposed to be 60 feet high in bronze. And at the tip of the top of it, it would point towards Mecca. And you could walk through it, and there's water coming down, and all the blue is water. And the rest, ceramics and so forth. So it's an interesting project, for me to think in those terms. This is 9/11. And the sky is actually taken exactly from that moment, which I looked up and so forth and transported. The middle black piece, which you can't see very well, also has those 12 zodiac petals that you can lie in and look up at the sky. And it actually kind of swirls. You walk up it in a swirling motion, and the names and so forth would also be there. There are vessel seats and many different things going on. It's hard to see it from this aerial view. But anyway, it was my contribution. This is in Ireland. As you know, Ireland with its Celtic cross is very different. It always has a circle in it. So this winged boat, or whatever you want to call it, actually, has a circle in it. But you can see the setting is quite nice. This is also done in Ireland, with the energy forces that I was talking about. I was in a artist residency in 2012, and I was on Skellig Peninsula, which is near Skellig Island, which is pretty famous. So Orpheus figures and angel tree, shapeshifter, and so forth. Just another drawing for the earth vessel seats. I'm showing you this because it's something else I'm working on. This is actually a mock-up. So meditations on the cosmic eye. This is like the second page. And it's a series of these. Some of them are downstairs. 18 of them. And what I did, because I do write poetry, is that they're very short poems. Some have been extracted from longer poems. And they're not literal in the sense of having a relationship that way directly. It's more atmospheric. This is actually the last one, the last page, but it's, it's a relief. The first poem is quivering reversibility to a pure rapture. Love's metabolism cracked the object world spell. The last poem, there are 66 poems. The last one is dewdrop, clay feet, effortless is the open heart. That's kind of the journey. Now, I'm just going to read you one poem that is titled The Painting. I should probably get back to a painting, but the painting is on the wall. You may stand in front of it, look right at it, turn your thoughts around it, sit inside, feeling it, breathe in its atmospheric aroma, see into its fusion of starry worlds, follow the sapphire lines, down its sensual swelling curves, hear the visceral music inside its deep color of purring blue, and then slide back into a calmly ease, absorbed by your light, being that you lit the painting alive from its dead matter. The alchemy of what occurs is inherently of you. Beyond the frame of thinking it is the transcendent view. That's how I think about painting, You want to ask some questions? Or? Yeah.
I just said a moment, I've seen this view, but without people moving around it.
Uh-huh.
You mentioned that, I had the image of a kind of a beautiful coral reef, which is your work, and the students kind of swimming around it as very beautiful tropical fish.
Mm.
So it popped into my mind when you first said it.
Oh, thank you.
Ways back.
Yes, some other people have mentioned, you say tropical fish, of water, feeling like water, the fluidness of it in some ways.
But those fish are part of the evolution
Yes.
of our species.
Yeah, that's true.
Why creative people are very important, obviously, in our society.
Mm-hmm.
And art is a taproot that goes back a couple 100,000 years that we know of, and we're just the continuation of that.
Sure.
And as you pointed out, through all that you said in your work, we're an important element of that evolution.
It's very true. I have another kind of experience that really kind of made a shift. A couple of things. One is that, when I was looking, as we do, at the cave paintings or primordial sculptures, like Venus of Willendorf, which is 30,000 BC, or some of the caves that have paintings that go back to 35,000. And the sophistication of them, the power of their presence, the beauty and eloquence of it. How do we understand that when this is the cave period, where one's mind or brain is just in the evolutionary aspect? To me, what it brought forth, and I'm not coming out just of myself, that many, many other people have said that we have a higher reason within us, a higher sense. And I think that in the creative act, you can call it tuition, or you can call it an organon, or you can call it whatever you want. There's something in us that comes forth that is almost like a gift. And if you think about the early settlements, from Maya to, early Egyptians to Sumerians or whatever, the fantastic places they have built, or go to Stonehenge, how did they ever get it there? How did they really understand the astrological signs to a precision that we today need all kinds of instruments to really help us? Something is within us that's more constant, whereas the changing aspect really has a sense of how we usually accept our functioning ability until something magical happens. So as an artist, what I'm saying is that I changed my idea of subject from the vehicles to putting it back into a position of being the harmony of the piece. And what I mean by this is that when, there were 29 students here, so I was talking about this the other day because they asked me. And, when you begin a piece, you're starting out of chaos in a sense. And that is the element of really bringing it into harmony somehow. And to bring it into harmony, you really have to bring the nutrients of the parts that really have a link. But it comes together in almost an unseen way, where it's the background of the harmony, the unseen harmony that holds it all together. So my switch was to always reach for that harmony, and then the parts and pieces become the instrument, like a symphony. And it helped me understand the creative process more. It also helped me understand the spiritual nature more. And we have it in us, and it's just unveiling and so forth. So I just wanted to share that with you, that it's part of how I work and how I think about these aspects, that there's something greater in us that it's pointing to. And in poetry, in the arts, metaphor plays a big part. And it's I feel that this is a new language, just like art is a new language. It's not the language that we're used to and verbally or whatever, but it's another type of language. And it takes a little bit of learning it, but feeling plays a big part. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to. Yes?
Thom, much of your paintings have such beautiful mark-making in them. And to me, it's almost as if there's a printmaking background that is approaching the painting surface due to the beauty and the areas of resist and that type of line work that you apply to the paint surface itself. Have you ever had any interaction with the printmaking process?
I have. I worked with Curly at Lafayette a number of times. And so I have, yeah. And before that a little bit in other places, but not too much. Yes?
Has anybody ever mentioned that some of the figures perhaps evoke also a mummy?
True. Yeah, it can go either way. You can say mummy or you can say cocoon. I mean, it's, things are open for interpretation. As a matter of fact, I don't know half the things that people sometimes know, and I learn from that. I mean, yes.
Could you talk a little bit about movement? Your paintings, they feel very kinetic, and I don't feel the same way about your sculptures. And I'm just fascinated because so much of art is about, Audubon killing the birds in order to paint them. and you have a little bit of, I feel a tension there between the two, and I wonder what your process is in the sculpting compared to the painting.
Right. Well, I mean, if you look at the angel tree, it has a lot of movement. But if you look at Orpheus, it's very still. It's purposeful. I mean, the energy of Orpheus is inside. So it's kind of focused in that. I have had people say, well, why don't you make them dance, you know? And they are dancing quietly in this other way. I'm sorry, you wanted me to...
I'm just interested in the feeling of movement when you're creating the painting first, and that it has this exchange with you and the painting, and that, you know, what's coming forth,
Sure.
and how that differs in the sculpture.
Yeah, well, the kinetic part is absolutely right in the paintings. You know, it's obvious that way. The silence and stillness in the Orpheus figures are purposeful. You know, that also retains a certain type of energy. And I think they do play off each other in a way. I mean, some people really go for the paintings, some people go for the sculptures. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it does have its presence. I think the presence is the most important to have, either way, kinetic or very still.
They work well together, I think, that's part of what I mean.
Yes.
There's a very different sense walking around the floor.
Yes, purposefully.
Paintings, and then be very different to look at the paintings without the sculptures.
True. And then what happens, as was pointed out, or when it was pointed out here, is that when figures come, us, spectators, it creates another type of kinetic energy, which actually helps fulfill the part. Like I said, you know, this is all dead matter until someone comes to bring it to life. And that's another observation on my part as an artist, to really kind of present that. That's why I'm interested in sacred spaces. It's not because of the object, it's because of the participation of the people coming to it and being part of it somehow, and hopefully in a more quiet and peaceful way, you know. But kinetic energy is important, and it's a life force, and that's why I try to bring that forward, you know. Yes?
Is there a Eurydice in you who is longing to come out and perhaps join Orpheus?
Yes, I've written some poems about that. You know, and also the whole cycle of that, where the tragedy. But he revives himself through the music and art. But there is, I had thought about that in the very beginning. I mean, in a way, Orpheus also, in some times, is androgynous, you know, feminine, masculine, so forth. So, yes, because I'm not a literalist, and because I'm not an academic anymore, I kind of stretch things so I don't have to have footnotes, you know? So, but it's suggestive, and I appreciate that. Yep, we're all set. Yes?
I have a million questions, but okay, so I know what bronze is like, but I really don't know what a big piece of wax is. You know what I mean? Like it is strong, I take it, but like, how strong is it? You know what I'm saying?
It needs a good armature. And you know, I mean, in museums you've seen wax sculptures or whatever that have been around a long time. If they're not brought into sunlight and, you know, there's no heat around it, it's fine. But otherwise, as all by itself, it's not that strong. You need to have a really strong armature. And I've had, many of them kind of during hot weather, which we've had, kind of sink a little bit, and I have to fix them. But essentially, I've learned how to build better armatures. Yeah. We're almost done? We're good? Yeah, okay. Any more questions? Well, I appreciate very much that you've come, and I appreciate listening to me. And I don't think I covered all the territory, but I did my best to bring it out to you. So,
I do have a question. How can we find out about other shows of yours, like in New York or Wales? Because I'm already a huge fan now. Because I want the art book, I want to follow your work wherever it goes. How can we find out? Instagram. Oh, really? Yeah, he's on Instagram.
well, it's my daughter put me on Instagram. She runs it. Well, I do, but it's kind of old. I mean, this is the problem. Not a problem, but this is a coming out of me. So I will be showing more, and I haven't been showing. So it's starting that format for me. So if you give me your information and so forth, I could stay in touch with you that way. That's one way to do it. So thank you very much. And,